That it's not about perfection. Most of the time, it's about showing up. It's never going to be perfect, y'all. Just start somewhere. Start with 1%. Comparison is the thief of all joy. Go chase comparison and you will never feel like you've made it. When we get out of our own way and we lean into our worth, it all makes a lot more sense.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flow Over Fear. I am really glad you're here today because on this episode, I am interviewing my good friend, Jen B. And I think this episode is going to generate a lot of buzz. Okay, really sorry about that dad joke, but I just kind of can't help myself. That's kind of what I do. But this episode is really, really great. I'm excited about this. This episode runs the gambit of Jen's life from growing up, the daughter of a political prisoner, to overcoming some early childhood challenges and then just finding her self-worth as she grew into adulthood and now coaching women to become best versions of themselves. So a little bit about Jen. Jen B is a life coach and motivational speaker, and she's on a mission to empower every woman to get unstuck and live her best life. Jen grew up in a household that showed love and shame through food, and started emotional eating at age 8. And around that same time, she also started getting bullied, losing her confidence and her sense of belonging. And her life changed about 6 years ago when she stepped into her worth. Now she's leveraging her mess to becoming her message. And she helps her clients to create 1% sustainable changes through her holistic 5-pillar framework, empowering people to live their best life mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially. So I'm really excited about this episode. So let's jump right in. Well, hey, everyone. I have Jen B with me, Coach Jen B, and I'm really excited to have her here because I met her very recently through the National Speakers Association, and we've gotten along ever since. We've met for a few times and done a couple events together and things. And it's really exciting to have you here, Jen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Adam, for having me. I'm excited to roll with you today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And I'm super thrilled. And I'd love to get started and just kind of learn a little bit about your background. Of course, I've learned about where you come from, and how you grew up. But it's such a powerful story. And I just love to learn from you in your words how you grew up.
Yeah, I got emotional there for a second, just bringing it up. So thank you for the opportunity to be here, Adam. I'm on a quest to turn my mess into my message. And so for that reason, I tend to be pretty vulnerable and open regarding my own book. And I think it really has helped people to feel so not alone in this world. Essentially, what I'm on a quest to is to help people understand, regardless of what their journey has been, that somebody along the way gets it. So really my journey starts before I was even here. I guess you could say it has been a direct impact to my life, a pretty significant one. And it's my parents. Both of my parents are political. My dad's political prisoner. Both of my parents are Cuban immigrants. And so my dad, based on his viewpoints, way before he had me or knew me, was incarcerated for 12 years. And he was
in Cuba? Was that in Cuba? Wow.
Yeah. So he was incarcerated for 12 years. He ends up actually being sentenced to be executed.
Wow.
And I think it was one of those situations where it was more of a mental scare tactic than really wasn't really going through with it. Regardless, it was hard. And I don't know a whole lot about that part of my dad's life because it was not something he freely shared. By the time that I came into my dad's life, or he came into mine, he was an extremely positive, uplifting, quiet. That's not why he ended up in prison. So quiet kind of man, very much an observer.
Right.
And it was not a part about his life that we really talked a whole lot. But what ends up happening instead is that my father ends up getting amnesty from the U.S. government. Then he travels over with my mom and his 2 parents. And then shortly after that, I was born in Miami, Florida. So I'm a child of immigrants. I'm also an only child. All to say that I'm going to go down here the rabbit hole of there was a lot of elements of my life where I did not feel like I fit in. And so whether it was because my parents were immigrants, or whether it was because our household language was Spanish and I didn't learn how to speak English till I was 8, or really a couple other factors where my mom taught me the skill that unfortunately didn't serve me or serve many people, which was in order to numb our feelings, we're going to emotionally eat.
Mhm.
So in my
Wow.
household, as in many, food can be love and connection, and it also can be shame and guilt. And I ended up getting both sides of the coin. And then around the age of 8 as well, my dad was 49 when he had me. So, he's an older dad. His health starts to decline pretty rapidly. And much of that was due to his hardships in prison. So not genetic, not something we necessarily could have predicted. But by this age of 8, I have these different factors into my life where I'm like, who am I? Why is life so hard? How do I fit in? Why don't the other kids understand that that is not my granddad? That is my father, right? And so very much feeling like I had to share my identity from a very vulnerable place, and I was definitely not ready at that age. And so most of what I did was run away and numb.
Hmm. So run away and numb. Yeah. So how did you do that? So you mentioned food was one of those vehicles, but was that literally running away, or was it kind of just figuratively? Or
Figuratively, I would say.
yeah,
I believe it or not, and most people probably wouldn't believe this about me these days if they met me. I'm fairly extroverted, right? So I say, Jen B's in the house, like she's here, right? But my way of running away then was I don't want the spotlight. I don't want to be called in class. I'm going to have the wrong answer to the question. Better to be quiet than to say anything at all. Very quickly, I found myself retreating in what most kids may like to do: friendships, sports, hanging out with people my own age. It was very much like I'm going to mask myself into the wall. I think there's actually a little gif of Homer Simpson. I don't know why that's coming up now, where he
that's
retreats
so true.
into like his backyard plants. Like literally, that just came up for me. It's what I
Yeah,
felt like. Like I'm here, but I'm not here. And so, how do I hide myself so that I'm not wrong, so that I'm not
yeah.
intimidated, so I'm not bullied?
Yeah, I wonder how many people feel like that, because I can certainly relate to that idea of just not wanting to risk the ridicule or risk like the fear, like maybe it's not even a real risk, but you just feel it, and yeah, and I can only imagine. Yeah, I can imagine how it felt, and I can relate to that. It's very similar to how I felt that at that age, but under different circumstances, obviously. But and so kind of going back to, so any idea, you mentioned you didn't talk about that much with your dad, the incarceration part or any of that. So any idea why he was in prison there? What happened to prompt that, or what was?
I can tell you a story. I don't know if it's 100% factual, right? And so my understanding is it's so weird, right? Because I have this perception of my father and who he was in my life. I lost him at 18. So I can't go back and ask him all these questions, right? And I wasn't at a point either in my life where I think he wanted to share openly, from a sense of like, I'm going to protect you. And also a sense, I don't know if there was, what the heck did I do with my life, and now here I am, by my age of 10, he was fully disabled. And I don't know if there was a little bit of that, like, what the heck did I do? Right. But my understanding is that my dad actually was a very, very assertive, confident man.
Mhm.
And he had certain political viewpoints when Fidel Castro came into power. And he wasn't about those things. He wasn't standing for the way that he came in and just, basically became a dictatorship. So my understanding is that my father made it known that he was not into that. And what that led was to several different political riots. Unfortunately, my understanding is people got hurt along the way. And my dad, I would say, again, I'm so highly look up to him, was an extremely smart man. And so I think he was a little bit of the puppet master. So some things that the new revolution did not want to continue, or wanted to squash as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So my dad gets this execution sentence. It's a pretty big deal. And I have met a couple others of his friends who went through something similar. My understanding is that they all had time, right? So they had, here's a 12-year sentence, here's a 10-year sentence here. So I don't know to what other extent my dad might have participated, but I think it was like, we're not for that. So hence we're gonna show people we're not up for that, and that's his sentence. So in prison, and this is I completely believe the story because this is the way that my dad used to show up. Is you could lessen your sentence by cutting sugarcane.
Mm. Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
my father was very much like, I'm going to be here forever. What does it really matter? Like, I don't need my sentence to like decrease because it's life, but I'm still going to go out, and I'm going to go out with my team, and I'm going to go out with my people, and I'm going to cut sugarcane for them and hence gift it to them for their sentences to be shortened. So I have heard those direct stories from people who knew my father after he passed.
Yeah.
And so I think to a certain extent, he was very much looked up to.
Yeah.
It's a little weird for me because my dad was not a guy to be in the spotlight, a guy to really speak up in a room. I think at that point he was either tired or he just wanted to live life differently, which I choose to believe it's option B. So yeah, that's what I know. I'll just give you backstory real quick. At one point in my life, I did think about going to Cuba and doing a documentary about following in his footsteps and kind of visiting those prisons. That hasn't happened yet, but very much inspired to do that at some point. So thank you for asking.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating story, and I love it because it kind of drives the history of how you came to be, and obviously where you are today. And I know that he shaped a lot of your life and has a big influence on
Absolutely.
that. And I love that because you actually got to my next question, which I was going to ask. Have you ever gone to Cuba, or would you ever go? And that kind of led into that idea of doing a documentary.
I've been once. I have a difficult emotional relationship with the country because I feel that to a certain extent they took the one man that I knew since day one in my life. And it's not a direct correlation, right? So there's a lot of emotions and mindset and thoughts into that. But a year after he passed, so my father passed away on December 31st of 2001. So it happens to be around the holidays, and it happens to be a big day that most people know what day of the week it is, right? What date it is. My mom decided that we would celebrate the holidays in Cuba. So that was actually the first time I ever stepped foot into a plane or on a plane. Ended up getting my passport, all the things, and then ended up in Cuba. And we spent about 7 days there, and with one of the key days being on his birthday. His death date. And I remember looking at the clock and being like, this is the time and place. At that point, it felt like where I needed to be. Like that trip was exactly what I needed at that time. I have never been back since. And by this point, most of my family, I think actually all of my direct family lives in the States. And that's been a process and a journey. But at this point, other than curiosity and wanting to like reconnect to my land, there's nothing else to say, like, you have to go now.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. And I would love to, it certainly sounds like a documentary that's worth making sometime. That's like, it's just such a powerful story too, and a connection that certainly not a lot of Americans get to see and not, and don't have that. But would you, kind of going into your story, what, you mentioned around 8 years old, you're feeling that social anxiety, that feeling like you were kind of just against, like becoming like or going into the plants like Homer Simpson. And I love that, description. Yeah. So what was in the preceding years, like leading up to, adulthood, how did that shape out? Like once you were starting to go to high school, did that improve? Did it change?
Yeah. So, part of it was I felt very alone, even in my own family. I will speak super highly of my dad and my mother. But at the end of the day, I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to be one more thing they had to take care of. And so we struggled financially. My dad didn't have a job. My mom has always been a house cleaner. And so finances didn't come easy. And then my dad's health, he ended up with kidney failure. So he had treatments every week, multiple times. So it's like, I don't want to be a burden on dad because he's going through his stuff. I don't want to be a burden on mom because she's going through her stuff. And so what ends up happening is there very much is a period of feeling alone, massively alone. And middle school, as it is for most of us, was an extremely hard period of life. Um, I think sometimes when we have insecurities, people who might be in fear may try to exploit those. And that's exactly what happened. I ended up being bullied pretty significantly, mostly through words and unkind statements, but also physically. But I didn't want to go home and say, by the way, mom or dad, you know what happened today? So it was mostly a sense of how do I just roll with this? And I ended up having a couple of good friends, but nobody in my life at that point kind of stands out as being like the safe person. Mm-hmm. Other than my parents, who again didn't want to burden. So what ends up happening is we didn't do a whole lot during summer vacations, and my parents only spoke Spanish. So to a certain extent, I got away with watching TV I shouldn't have been watching. And part of that TV was like Ricky Lake and Jerry Springer and all the shows that, as a 14, 13-year-old girl, I probably shouldn't have been watching. But that's what I was doing. I was trying to find a way to relate, for lack of a better word. And Ricky Lake came on the show one day. So if Ricky ever hears this, if Ricky ever comes across my path, I do have to say thank you. She had a panel of morbidly obese people that day. I was well on track for that. And something in me clicked that maybe things could be different, that maybe I could make a different choice, that maybe I could start standing up in my worth. And so what ends up happening that was really beneficial, but then kind of got stuck for the next 20 years, is I lost a lot of weight that summer. So the cool thing to that story is a lot of the bullying stopped. The not so cool thing to that story is I realized how much physical appearance can be a factor in whether you're accepted or not, which does not sit well with me whatsoever. Part of the reason why I coach women and some few select men, but mostly women, on working through all this stuff that we end up burying and learning at a very early age. So high school was good. I ended up going to college, which was epic. By this point in my high school career, I found those people, or I should say those people found me, who gave me enough hope to be like, it could be different. I'm first generation high school graduate. So my parents talked education highly, but nobody really knew what the heck that meant. Where do you go? How do you start? What applications do you need in? And I had multiple people who found me and kind of guided that. So I ended up going to the University of Florida. I am a crazy college football fan. I drank the Kool-Aid hard. And for lack of a better word, I think that's where I first found my sense of belonging. Like, maybe I can do this. And just, because it was a united team. We didn't have to know all the intimate details about each other's lives. We were a united team on Saturdays, and we wore united shirts and, all these kinds of things. And we had a united rivals, right? And so that was like my first real sense of community. I ended up having a crazy summer job where I used to sell educational products door to door. It was my way of making it financially as far as my studies and paying my way through. And that job really didn't give me much leeway to hide in the plant or hide in the wall. Like, I had to go and I had to knock on your door and I had to have a conversation. And those things really, really, really helped. Ultimately, where my big, shattering moment where things just open up and I start to make some significant traction was at a gym 6 years ago.
6 years. Wow.
Yeah, I was a kid who I didn't want the spotlight on me. So I pretty much refused to participate in PE. If somebody wanted to go ahead of me, I would do that, or I would let them do that. So my physical competence and mostly self-belief was non-existent. I had success losing weight, but I definitely would not have considered myself an athlete. So 6 years ago, there's a gym, and it's a very well-known concept. At the end of the day, some of the marketing, I was like, can I do this? The coach is going to see me. If they see me, they're going to talk shit on me. Excuse me.
Yeah. Oh, no, please.
That happened. Instead, what ends up happening after I worked through my fear is I showed up on an April Fool's Day of 2017. I walked in through the doors, And people believed. And I saw people like me. And I saw people different than me. And I saw all these things that I finally started to understand that it's not about perfection. Most of the time, it's about showing up. So my whole thing at that point was just point the car in the right direction. I don't know how I'm going to get to the gym. I don't know what my performance is going to be like. I don't know how fast I'm going to be able to walk or run. Get the car or point it in the right direction. And really, Adam, what that did for me, which I had no clue this is what I was working on at that point, which is what I help a lot of clients with, is habits. Doesn't sound sexy. I mean, who really wants to change your habits, right? Like usually we're experiencing growth and discomfort as we're going through it. But what I'm a firm believer on is when we change the way and the actions of how we show up, choosing something else, and we live in that consistently, the way that we talk about ourselves to ourselves changes. And when this changes your mind and your heart, that's it, right? But at some point, I needed somebody to say you're on the right track. And that's what those coaches did for me. On the days that were scary, on the days that were great, on the days that were difficult, and I didn't want to come back. Somebody said, you can. And so the more we believe in that and the more facts we try to find that we can, it's funny the way the world works, you can. So Henry Ford has a statement that I've kept on my desk for the longest, and it's whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. So that's ultimately present day now. What I have not shared yet is kind of how it got into my coaching journey, but I'll stop there for a second.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I so appreciate you sharing all of that, because I mean, I think at least from my perspective, I've seen that journey within a lot of middle schoolers, being the parent of teenagers and having been one myself, and knowing that like just that age where you just feel so alone and isolated. And you talked about community there, and it's such a powerful concept that this idea of community, because if you've ever if you, the collective you of the audience listening, have ever experienced that sense of isolation, but you've also felt the welcome acceptance of the right kind of community, not the one that you just that you want to strive for, that may not be authentic to you, but the one that's accepting. I mean, there's so much power in that. I love how the coaches told you, yeah, it's okay. Just keep coming back. And great quote that I just caught from you too. Not about perfection. It's about showing up. That's just so good. So good.
I'm a firm believer in the 1%. I think because of so many societal expectations, it's like, it's got to be perfect. I got to get, the round of applause. I got to get the award. I get it. I understand where that comes from. And so often it just keeps us stuck in doing the same thing over and over again. It's never going to be perfect, y'all. It's not. And so my whole thing is start somewhere. Start with 1%.
Yeah.
And
the talk 1%, about the 1%. Yeah. Go. Oh, yeah. I'd love to hear more about that.
The 1% can be anything, but I think part of so awareness is great, Adam. The problem with awareness, sometimes it's like, I don't know if I want to be here and feel all these things and think all these things. But, I think we do it often. We have the highlight reel, the one who made it right now. Okay. And I know this is going to air later on in the summer, but what did we just see with women's basketball? Caitlin Clark. And I freaking love her. Okay. This is going to create huge momentum, right? There's been many people like her. There's been many people before her, and there will be many people after her. But what we're watching right now is Caitlin's highlight reel. Caitlin didn't get there overnight, right? It's a concept of a 1%. And so what I ask folks to do is, don't live your life on Facebook. Don't live your life on social media. Don't live your life on superficial coffee chats and conversations, because most of the time they don't help us to feel supported, vulnerable, and like we can be real. I love how you said authentic community. Like we can be authentic, right? And so this concept of 1% comes through because it's okay to be messy. It's okay to live in, in actions that we want to strive for, but aren't completely yet on autopilot or part of our DNA. And so I sometimes equate this to, we'll talk about the concept of an ice cube really quickly. And I have to say, some of this I take from Atomic Habits, James Clear. I'm a huge fan. But when an ice cube is sitting outside at 26 degrees and it happens, the weather's 26 degrees, the ice cube's an ice cube. And then all of a sudden, let's say the morning sun's coming up and the ice cube turns to 27 degrees. Nothing's happened. For most of us, at that point, we just give up. Again, the ice cube is metaphorical for something else in your life. The one workout, the one meal that you ate right, the one interview you had, the one whatever, right? It's not a concept of, it is a concept of 1%, but it's not the 1 degree that made the change. The sun did give more energy to it. Here we are, 28, 29, 30, 31, and we don't see the transformation until 32. And we think all of our actions before 32 degrees, whatever that might be in your life, making it, were unrelated and didn't really have a whole bunch of value. Those are the actions that make you you. Those are the actions that when the days are hard and you still do the thing, whatever the thing may be for you, those are the days that build character. And at the end, when we've made it, right, whatever that concept may be for you based on success, that is a moment to celebrate. And yes, inspire others and do the thing. But that is not the moment that made you. It's all the ones before it. So I get so darn passionate on it because it's like, I feel so many of us in society are stuck because it has to be hard and it has to be perfect. Start with one whatever, and know that 1 + 1 + 1 will get you to whatever your magical dream result is.
Yeah. And so how would you speak to somebody who is looking to start, like just start something, doesn't like where they're at, feels stuck, feels like they want that change, but feels like that road ahead to where, the ideal is, the point of quote unquote perfection or what they want is just so far from where they're at now. Like what's the message to that person? How do they start?
Yeah. Many of us jump directly into action. We go buy the thing, we go do the thing, we go find the thing. In my perspective, it doesn't start there. It starts internally. And it starts internally with understanding your why. It's not the why of why you want the thing. It's the why of why you really, 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 really want the thing, right? And the most inspiring, this is the first work that I do with any client. I'm not going to go chase actions for you. If that is a coach that you want and simply about action, there's many of them. Go have a relationship with them. If we want to do the internal work that is going to create sustainable action that is grounded in authenticity, then let's chat.
Hey everyone, I interrupt this program to introduce you to a powerful tool that will help you gain clarity on your vision and accelerate your growth and achievement. If you're listening to this show, it is likely that you have an exciting vision for your life. But the problem is that we often get caught up in the day-to-day. We get distracted, we face uncertainty, overwhelm, and self-doubt. And as a result, the gap between where you are and where you want to be seems insurmountable. And that's why I created a framework for how you can turn your vision into strategic, disciplined action that will accelerate your results in the next 90 days. I call it the Vision Reflection Retreat. It is a 2-day solo excursion designed to reignite passion and adventure into your busy life and realign your focus toward your why. This is the very same framework that I use every 90 days to reflect on my own life and my vision and set my goals for the next quarter. And it has been a game changer. And the good news is that I'm giving away this Vision Reflection Retreat guidebook for free when you sign up for my newsletter. Simply go to flowoverfear.com/retreat and download your free guide and enjoy the journey.
So some of my best client stories are from folks who come in and they say, I want this, Jen. Okay, so I'll give you a quick one. I do a lot more work that is not weight related, but this one I find super inspiring. So I'm going to share, and it's actually from a gentleman. So this gentleman, we have a call together, and I remember asking him, hey, why are we here, right? What are we looking to accomplish? Okay, I want to lose X amount of pounds, Jen. Anytime a conversation starts like that, I'm like, that's not why we're here, but wait, let's get there.
Right.
So after asking him, like, why do you want to lose weight? Well, I want to be more physically fit and agile, which I think more people would agree with, right? Okay.
Yeah,
well,
right.
Why do you want to be more physically fit and agile? Because I want to spend more time with my family. Why do you want to spend more time with your family? Well, because I love them. And when I'm with them, I get them, they get me. I feel love and connection, and I feel like I can conquer anything. Okay. And why do you want to accomplish that moment? What it ends up coming down to us, for us, Adam, is this gentleman wants to sit in the front seat of a roller coaster without, being able to do that. At that point, he couldn't do that. Okay. Because growing up, the people that he, are no longer here, and the people he had the best connections with were at theme parks. It's not about the 50 pounds.
Yeah.
That's great, and we'll get there. But when you wake up in the morning and you don't want to do the thing, it's because you want more love and connection and relationships in your life. That is your
man.
love.
Yeah.
So
gosh, that's so good.
That's the way I, roll with my clients. That's where we start. And I think many of us can have a vision, and then life happens. And so this is why it's so important to go deep, but also this is why I'm such a big fan of coaching and accountability and community. It doesn't have to be all three. For me, I found the community, I did the thing, and they kept me in it, right? Sometimes we need more of an intimate setting, whether it's a one-on-one group coaching, whatever, like we can do it in that environment, but don't give up just because it's elusive. And I recently read another quote. I'm not going to be able to know it verbatim, but essentially the difference between those who make it and those who don't are they just happen to stand up one more time.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Yes. It's interesting. Because that the losing weight thing, resonates with me. As somebody who's like been in the Ironman triathlon world and all that kind of stuff. I hear that a lot. I just want to lose some weight. And I was recently in a children's hospital, and in the food court in the children's hospital, there was a scale that had for some reason in the food court had a scale so people could weigh themselves in a hospital, in a food court. It blows my mind why that was there.
Yeah.
And there was also a contest associated with it. And I was just like, it made me angry, but I feel like that the measure for how we're defining success on that is all screwed up. Because What you just described there is that, the weight on the scale could go up and down, but that's not the key point of like what we're chasing. And that could be anything. The money in your bank account could be that, or
the likes on Facebook, or the status of fame, right? Or, whatever it is for you. Again, I feel like I'm kind of quotey today. They're just coming through, so I'm going to keep saying them. But comparison is a thief of all joy. Go chase comparison, and you will never feel like you've made it. And there are some societal expectations that honestly, we've got them a little bit backwards. I tell my clients often the scale does not define you. It's like a terrible boyfriend who one day you step on it, it's like, you're so pretty and you're amazing and life is great. And then the next morning you wake up and it's like, yeah, you're not that great. It's like, okay, do I really want an object like that in my life that's going to predict my worth and how I approach my day? Like, heck no. But what I can do is I can build other measures of success in my life that can help me have the same result, but a different mindset around it. And again, many of us, like you mentioned, whether it's money, whether it's fame, whether it's likes, whether it's weight, we end up in the cycle of not sustainable, right? Like we do the challenge, we get the results, and it's like, well, but I missed that thing and I missed that thing, and now I'm going to go back to my old behaviors. But when we change our identity, I am an athlete. I am a successful business owner. I am a great podcaster. That is what you live into every day. It's not about a number.
I love that. When you change your identity, I'd love to hear more about that. How important, like just the importance of identity, like, and how you associate yourself with something.
Well, I think at the end, what ends up working out for me, and 6 years, this process probably took really about 3 years. Most of the things that I was doing, I had no clue that this would be the end result. Like literally, I was just doing life and knowing that there had to be more, but not sure what more was. There's a very different mentality between saying, like, again, we keep talking about weight. I do a lot more than weight, but I want to weigh X pounds, which is typically, right? I want to wear X jean size. I want to do X things, versus the identity of I'm an athlete. When you're an athlete, there's so many things that go into being an athlete. Your mindset, your consistency, what you put in your body, right? The things you say to yourself, all those components are those of an athlete. So part of what I help my clients to really do is to live in this concept of act as if. We're
Hmm.
already there, y'all. So
Yeah.
what is this act as if for you? If you're a successful business owner, what does that business owner do every day? They probably make some calls. They probably know where the money finances are. They know these things about their business. They're savvy about it, right? If you are someone who's looking to flip the script on what I call the itty bitty shitty committee, which is a voice in your head that tells you you can and you can't, you're somebody who says kind things about yourself. What do?
Yeah.
Days that are good and days that are bad. So once we change our identity, right, and that is through habits and that is through process, then we've arrived. That is really what most of us want. I think when we come down to it, it's not that measure. It's we want to live this lifestyle of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
You mentioned community a little bit before, and I'll just say that the best way to normalize any kind of behavior is to join a community, whatever
Hmm.
community that might be.
Amen.
So for us, if we look around, honestly, the 5 people, 10 people who spend most of our life in our life, we are likely very similar to them. So if you want to change your identity, and you want to be a runner, go hang out with the runners. It's going to be a whole lot easier than sitting on your couch thinking like, my 9 friends, nobody wants to go work out, right? So, but this takes the 1%. And again, the 1% for me always starts with awareness and intention.
Yeah. I love that. Awareness and intention. That's so, so good. And so your journey from 6 years ago to where you're at now, and I know that I believe that started, you were working in HR, right? As an HR professional. And then you decided to move into coaching. Can you kind of talk about that journey? What prompted it? What was the
Yeah.
transformation?
Crazy change. Talk about like lots of moments where it's like, what am I doing here, right? But here's the deal, y'all. I feel like I have a bigger message, and so that message needed to present itself in a different form. I do still give my dad a lot of credit for everything that is happening in my life. I think to a certain extent he's not physically with me, but very much is connected to me spiritually, emotionally, mentally, etc. So what ends up happening is I feel like I found the answer, right? This girl who, again, the negative talk track is very obvious, have some data in my past life that you can't make it, you're not the kind of people who make it, etc. Right? So I have these compounding effects, and all of a sudden I see myself on the other side, and I'm like, hey, I'm pretty cool. I don't say that from a place of being vain, but a place to understanding my worth and being like, I can do it. I can go for what I want. I am worthy of the things that I want in my life and the relationships, etc. Right? And so having this moment, it's funny when you're open to things, how they show up. Then the question is whether you're going to receive them or not. So what ends up happening is 2.5. I was an HR professional for 14 years. Heard a lot of people's stories. I was an HR manager. I was essentially what you call the open door policy. So the open door was my door. I've heard a lot of stories, and there's been a lot of connections and amazing things, and also a lot of WTF moments. Got to be real, okay? But,
Sure.
2.5 years ago, I end up randomly in this phone conversation with someone who gave me enough motivation to go understand that life could be different, to help me understand that things could be different, that it didn't have to be the only way you make it America is you get the education, you get the job, you stay in the seat, and you retire. That is a way. And honestly, in HR, that's what I preached for a very long part of my life. And so I took the leap. I took the leap on December 31st. If you remember, that's also the day my father passed, of 2022. And I went all into being an entrepreneur, which sounds really scary even sometimes when I say it out loud. But what I knew is that I had something in me, a voice, a share, a quest, a mission, that now that I knew this information, now that I came from awareness and I did the thing, I couldn't hoard it. It was not mine to keep. It was mine to share. And so when that happens, I become extremely passionate about my work. I start seeing changes in my clients, mostly internally. The physical results came after that. And I started saying, well, if we were to do this, what could that be like? Or what could this look like? And instead of just in our life, as many times we show up, it's like, well, that's not possible. It's not right now. What I say to a lot of my clients is stop playing the when then game. And most of us are playing it to some kind of variation, but it's like when the kids grow up, then I'll take care of myself. Or when my business makes X amount of money, then I'll be quote unquote legit or able to leave corporate. I took the leap, Adam, and it was scary. And 2023 came with a whole bunch of highs and lows, including then moving from a partnership to becoming a solopreneur. And it's been epic because I also am able to share my message genuinely and authentically, representing myself. I, again, tend to be pretty vulnerable. Some of my clients have coined it as Genergy, but I'm here to create the Genergy, but also to mostly facilitate it, knowing that I don't have the answer to your question, but likely what I can help you out with is a different question that maybe you haven't been asking yourself. Because all the answers are inside of you. It's just we're willing to approach it from a different mindset. So yeah, life is good. I am super proud of the decision I made. I know my dad is super proud, which means a ton to me. And I have an extremely supportive partner who pretty much gave me a kick in the pants and said, it's time to go.
Nice. That's a lot of times what it takes, right?
Yeah, so I did it. But, as with anything, including our personal development, business development, it's always a process of growing and shifting and approaching things differently. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. And I think it's a testament to a great coach of someone that doesn't just carve greatness out of people, but shows them the greatness that's inside of them that they can bring out from within. And so I love that approach. And I know you have a 5-pillar framework. Yeah. So can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'll share on that a little bit. I know, we've had conversations regarding weight and things like that. And, it relates a little bit to my story about how it all started. But ultimately what I ended up, and I haven't shared this point yet, but this confidence I unlocked in the gym, where my curiosity then turned was like, well, if I can be this confident in this aspect of my life, how would that change? And if I were to be this same confident in that other aspect of my life, how would that change? It's interesting. When we get out of our own way and we lean into our worth, it all makes a lot more sense. Is every day easy? No. Is every day worth it? It is. And so what I help clients do through my 5-pillar framework is build a model of sustainability. Because the last thing I want my clients to do is to continue living in that hamster wheel. If I did the thing, I showed up for the thing got hard and I quit. Mm-hmm. And that's where first the internal work has to happen. So My 5 pillars real quick, I always start with my clients on mental wellness. For me, this is, I want to be my own best friend. I want to say kind things about myself. I'm going to explore the language I say about me and how can I change that from disempowering to empowering. So we do some work around that. Then we go to emotional wellness, which for me is unleashing your stories, the baggage, either that you've inherited because somebody gave them to you and you accepted it, or that you built in your own life, or maybe even society has handed down. So that's emotional wellness for me. Then we go to physical wellness, which for me will always be, I will grow strong. It's not about a number, as I've talked before. It's about, can you spend more time with your family? Can you hang out with your family? Can you create more of those connections, right? Physically, with time and being physically present. Then we move over to spiritual, which for me is finding the peace in our life, the quiet. Many of us are allergic to quiet. We're fearful of quiet because it can get scary when we get in our own voice, right? But spiritual allows room for that growth. And then last but not least, financial, because I do believe that a financially healthy life is something we're all worthy of. It's something we all want. So I work through all 5 pillars with my clients on what I call the 5-month growth transformation journey.
I love that. So you spend 1 month on each, or do you kind of like spread it out a little bit?
I have different programs depending on what it is that the client needs and also depending on what corporate needs. So I deliver these kind of modules as well, not in exactly that same fashion. I put my corporate hat on after spending 14 years in that seat. We get to do cool things along those. So I'll give you a couple different ones that I've done. So recently did a workshop called it was a DEI, so diversity, equity, and inclusion group at a local credit union around cultivating courage in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So our power, our negotiation, our standing, and our worth. I've also done team dynamics. So I worked in a lot of environments where employees would point fingers at each other, first shift and second shift, sales and distribution, etc. So forming that team cohesion is, stuff of the work I work around as well. And then, but my goal with corporate is really to come in and say, what are your needs and how do I deliver on them? Most of the elements I'm going to take from one of those pillars of growth.
That's amazing. I love that. And it's so all encompassing too. Just the 5 pillars touch every area of our lives in a good, necessary order too. Just making sure that our mind is at peace. As you see so many people just maybe tackling things from the wrong angle. Like, I just got to get my physical shit together, my physical health together, but they're not getting to that why that you're trying to get to. Yes. So powerful. Yeah.
So many of us spend our life being human doings instead of human beings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And so we quickly go towards actions without intention or true alignment. And so hence we end up in the hamster wheel. I've been there. I get it. It feels safe. I'm just going to go do the thing today. But then the question, the itty bitty shitty committee starts showing up and saying, but do we really want to do that thing today? Right. So, the internal work is key.
Yeah. So if you could go back to, your 14-year-old self or the person that was maybe 8 years old or sometime where you felt like you were at your most stuck or feeling most just disconnected, what would you tell yourself being the Gen B that you are today?
I think I'd tell her a couple things. Number one, you're not a bother. So you are worthy of getting and receiving the love and affection and care that you're worthy of, right? The other thing I ultimately would tell her, not that I ever came close in my life or anything like that, but don't give up. And I do believe that many of the things that we go through in life, especially in trying moments, are there to teach us something. Not every lesson is a fun lesson to learn. Most are not. But ultimately, I think that is where my relatability to the work that I do now comes through. So it all happens for a reason. And you are worthy of showing up for yourself and others showing up for you.
I love it. That's so, so good. Such a great place to wrap this up because this has been a real amazing interview and just lots of power and a lot of great insights. So thank you so much, Jen, for being here. How can people get connected with you? How can they find you?
Try to keep it simple. So just to be clear, Gen B is JEN and then BEE, like the thing that buzzes. Long story short, I won't tell you that story today, but ultimately it's growwithgenb.com. That is my website. That is where you can find all the things. That is my Google profile. And then on Facebook, I tend to be pretty, more, I guess, just lay it how it is. So it's just Gen B on Facebook. So keeping it simple, Adam, so that people can get unstuck and do the thing today.
That's great. Well, please reach out to Gen B at growwithgenb.com. There you can find different ways to connect with her with regard to coaching, speaking, workshops, corporate events, all sorts of different things that she's doing. And you can get engaged in her 5 pillar framework and just get 1% sustainable changes gradually every day. So Jen, thank you so much for being here. This has been an honor. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. All right.
And everybody else out there. Thanks so much for being here. We will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today on Flow Over Fear. If you are liking this show, please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. That way you'll be first to know when I drop a new episode, including interviews or trainings or dad jokes. That's right, dad jokes. Add a little levity to your life. And if you liked this episode in particular and you think somebody can get something from it, please share it with a friend. And that way we'll spread the message together. Thanks again for joining me today. We'll see you next time.